Super. So I'm Heather Berg. I'm a digital equity specialist here at Accessible Web, and I like to try and help our customers bridge the gap between the technical side of digital accessibility and the lived experience, user experience side of things for our users with disabilities. I have a special guest with me today. Laura, I'll let you introduce yourself if you would, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Laura Siegel, and I am the State Director of the Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deafblind Services. And thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. So we're going to begin with our first slide, which for me is I just like to do kind of a quick overview to give everybody an idea of what we're going to talk about today. So we'll go through that. We already checked number 1 off the list, which is introductions. Number 2, we are going to go over some terms that folks who are deaf or hard of hearing may use to identify their hearing loss. We're going to talk about some common causes of deafness and hearing loss. We'll speak about some types of assistive technologies and communication methods used by folks who are deaf or hard of hearing. We will then look at a few concepts just to kind of keep top of mind as we go through the course of our conversation today. Then Laura and I will chat and learn a little bit about her lived experience in the digital environment. And we will wrap up with talking with you about some other ways that Accessible Web can help along your accessibility journey. And at the end, we will do that audience Q&A. And at that point, your questions can be related specifically to our topic for today, or they can be general digital accessibility questions. On to the next slide, we're going to just take a moment to look at some terms that are commonly used by folks who are deaf or hard of hearing to identify themselves. So the first on this list is deaf, and that's capital D, deaf. This is a term that very broadly speaking refers to a profound degree of hearing loss. And these folks may also identify closely with deaf culture and deaf community. Our next term is hard of hearing, or you'll see I've just abbreviated it down to HOH from here on in the slides. And this can be a degree of hearing loss that ranges from mild to severe. These may be folks who benefit from hearing aids or cochlear implants if that is the right choice for them. Another term you might hear is deaf disabled, and this just represents someone experiencing hearing loss alongside other disabilities. Deaf blind is one where folks are experiencing hearing loss along with some degree of vision loss. And the last one is late deafened. And as the name suggests, this can be a way that folks who lose a significant degree of hearing later in life may identify. Moving on to our next slide, there are a few factors to take into consideration when folks are sort of identifying using the terms that we just discussed. Obviously, this is just a short list. This is not comprehensive, but one of those factors can be how strongly or whether or not that individual identifies with deaf culture or deaf community. The degree to which they can hear or their degree of hearing loss that may contribute to how they identify, the relative age onset, right? We talked about late deafened. And then also the existence of hearing loss in combination with another type of disability, such as deaf disabled or deaf blind. On our next slide, we'll look at some common causes of deafness and hearing loss. And again, this is very broadly speaking, but there are genetic conditions. So something that you're born with, birth-related trauma, childhood illnesses, injury or disease, exposure to loud noises or toxic substances, and typical age-related hearing loss later in life. On to the next slide, we'll look at some communication methods and assistive technologies that folks who are deaf or hard of hearing might use. The first one we have on this list is American Sign Language. You may have seen it referred to as ASL. It's important to recognize a couple of things here. The first is that ASL is a language system unto itself and may very well be the native or first language of people who are deaf. The second thing to know is that American is not the only sign language, right? So there are multiple versions of sign language around the world, depending on one's geographic location. Another communication method used is spoken language, written communication, moving a little more from communication methods into assistive technology. Captioning is an important one, and there are a few different categories here that we need to know about. So captioning can be open, closed, or live. Open captioning is where the captions are embedded in the video. They're present for everyone to see and enjoy and cannot be removed or adjusted. Closed caption is when a separate track is provided along with the video where those captions can be displayed. And in closed captions, generally, there's the ability to adjust things like font style, size, contrast, color, those sorts of things, which make it easier for folks to customize. And then the third would be live captioning, and that's where we have a live captioner present at an event or during a webinar or something like that, where they are generating those captions in real time. Also, the use of transcripts, text-based transcripts in the digital world can be really important, in particular if you're thinking about someone with hearing and vision loss. That person may be using a refreshable Braille display, which we talked about in our first user experience webinar, and that is able to generate real-time electronic Braille and would be one of the only means of consuming information for individuals who are deafblind. So those text-based transcripts are super important. On to our next slide. I'm just going to offer a few things to kind of keep top of mind as Laura and I have our conversation. And the first of those is deafness and hearing loss exists on a spectrum, as do most all disabilities. No two individuals experiencing hearing loss are going to have the exact same experience. It's really important not to try and offer a one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to accessibility. Deaf and hard of hearing folks are the experts on their own communication method preferences and access needs. So always engaging with your stakeholders is the best way to find out what works best for them. And then lastly, and this kind of follows on the first point I made here, is that people who are deaf or hard of hearing may use a variety of communication methods and or assistive technologies. And so again, it's important not to kind of try and silo folks into using one method or another. It's important to have the robustness of a variety of methods available. All right, so that's kind of our setup and context. And now we can go ahead and kind of move over to the conversation where Laura and I are going to get to chat a little bit. So the first question, Laura, that I was hoping to get your thoughts on is when you think about your daily routines, so whether that's work or home or personal, can you think of a time when your access needs were met really well, everything was in place, and it made it easier for you to complete a task, or things just went really smoothly? And if you can you give us an example or tell us a little bit about what it looks like when those things are in place?
So just to clarify, are you talking about just digitally related things?
Um, in particular, yes, but if you have anything else you'd like to share, that would be fine. But yeah, if it's related to, say, maybe using a website or being on like a video call or something of that nature.
I feel that I'm able to approach a business more comfortably, and I feel more included if I don't show like a level of ignorance. Like if I'm calling a business, and it's amazing. Often I'll call a business and I don't realize they're going to hang up on me. I have to get in my car and drive there because they're so ignorant about answering a phone for a deaf person. It has happened to me on multiple occasions. I've had to drive to a store and say, "Could someone please tell me who just answered the phone?" And I look at them and I say, "Do I look like a Nigerian scammer to you? Because I'm not." And they just assume that a video call is a scammer and they hang up on me. So I have to confront them. So those are the difficult things. It makes, for a negative experience, and it makes me perceive your business negatively.
Yeah, oh, I can feel your frustration there. That sounds like it would be really unpleasant. And that actually kind of gets to a question we were going to talk about a little later, which is in the event that you needed to reach out to a business either for customer support or to make a purchase or because there was an access barrier. I was going to ask you if you'd had that experience and if you could recall an experience where things didn't go so well and maybe one where things did go well and it was easier for you to kind of accomplish that task. So it sounds like, being sure that people understand that, not categorically dismissing a video call would be a good best practice. But could you elaborate on that a little bit more? Have you had a good experience and what was that like? Or what would you suggest that they could do better?
I think education on all of the different relay services, all of the different telephone options. It's very important that people understand that there's a different way to handle a variety of different calls, and that avoids, telling a third party, like the interpreter or the communication assistant. Don't refer to them saying, "Oh, do you mind telling Laura or tell her this or tell her that?" Just act like it's a direct conversation and ignore the interpreter or the communication assistant. Sometimes, if I'm in a meeting, like you never tell the interpreter, "Hey, interpreter, can you tell her this? Can you tell Laura that?" Just talk specifically and directly to me without referring to my interpreter at all.
Or
Yeah, it
yeah,
happens sometimes that way. I mean, I've had many positive experiences, but I think if education is key to that positive experience.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's something that we have spent some time here in our office hours series, in particular, talking about how to build accessible customer support experiences. And certainly, education and training and disability etiquette across teams, but particularly customer service folks who are client facing or customer facing is super important. I'm wondering, related to, say, like captioning in particular, or um, interpreting, are there certain circumstances where like you would prefer to have one over the other? Are there things that businesses should know about like having both options available? I'm just wondering if you could give us some advice and maybe even talk a little bit about the different types of like telephone and relay services that are available so folks who are wanting to um, build out an accessible customer support experience could learn a little bit more about that.
I know that getting captioning service and interpreting services is very expensive and very difficult sometimes, but there are resources out there that people might not know about, like the RCC, the relay conference captioning. The only requirement for that is that the person who's providing the services has to be a resident of Vermont or work in the state of Vermont. And then the IRC, they use a hybrid, and it has to be a hybrid meeting. So one person is in person, one person's remote, and then you can use that RCC free relay conference captioning. That's at the vermontrelay.com website. you can put in a request for that. It's really nice because it's a wonderful resource that many people overlook and don't realize is out there, and it's free. Unfortunately, I wish it was the same for interpreting services, but it's not. That's one drawback here in Vermont. There's not a lot of interpreters, but you can negotiate with your customers and compromise on what's the best way to communicate if you can't get an interpreter with the limited pool of interpreters that we have. So, one
Yeah, well,
you can
go ahead.
do if you have like an intake form, you can include like a question about, what are your phone requirements? Are you able to dial 911 or not? That type of thing. Oh,
Mhm.
711, sorry, interpreter error, 711. Or do you prefer the telephone or email or texting? Offer a variety of options to your customers and let them decide instead of limiting them to just one. It's better to be flexible because some people really detest the relay service and don't want to use it. There might be people out there who don't even realize that there is technology that you can use instead of the relay service.
Mm.
For example, you could download, so a hard of hearing person can download, Inno, Inno caption, INNOCAP, InnoCap. So a hard of hearing person can download that on their cell phone and have that. And then it automatically will create a transcript of what the person who's speaking to you says, the entire conversation. So that's a great option for people who maybe don't like the relay.
These are some fantastic resources. I'm really appreciating you sharing those because I will say, I mean, we're in the business, and I certainly didn't know that some of these options were available. Um, And I also appreciate you sort of reiterating what we spend a lot of time talking with folks about, which is offering those multiple modes or methods of communication. So that it seems like that's really very important. I wonder if Laura, if you were able to sit down with someone who was wanting, maybe a developer or designer, and they were wanting to create a really inclusive digital space, or website or mobile application or desktop application, whatever the case might be. Um, and they wanted to be sure that everyone, regardless of what technology or communication methods they were using, felt welcome there. What is there any particular advice that you would give them? Anything you'd especially like to see kind of built in right from the beginning?
Well, yes. For example, if you have any videos, please don't rely on the auto captioning. The auto generated captions are, replete with errors. So do a SRT file, a transcript. Um, Make sure you need to be able to recognize the difference between auto captioning. Like if you look at a YouTube video that has auto generated captionings, people don't realize that you can't change the font size, the color, the background. I mean, some of these you can if you do an SRT file, a subrip file. It's much easier for people to read. By the way, I just saw that someone typed in the Q&A. This is a question related to ASL and AI, the use of ASL via AI. It's not something I recommend. ASL is not a word for word translation from English. It's a very different dialect. It has a different grammatical structure, different syntactical structure. It's very different. The semantic choices are different. So it's not a one to one translation. So AI generated ASL is not something that I would recommend that you use. Sorry to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that 100%. And that seems to be the case right now with AI in terms of accessibility. Sort of work in general is that it's just not at a point where it's able to um, be effective. If you're trying to use AI to generate ASL, it's not being interpreted correctly, or if you're trying to use AI to generate image descriptions for someone maybe who can't see them, it's not being described accurately. And so that's definitely a theme that's kind of come up across our user experience webinar series is we're not relying on AI at this point to do the work for us when it comes to accessibility and communication. I'm really glad you brought that
Yes, and
up.
also, could I add something to that, Heather?
Please go right
Related
ahead.
to alt text. The
Mhm.
important thing about alt text is that it is going to be relayed verbally to a blind person. So if you have an image, please add the alt text, a description of the image that sort of says, what is this image? What does it look like? So alt text is a very brief, very short description, but verbally, a person who's deaf or hard of hearing, it's kind of worthless. So.
Yeah, I imagine that's something that could be useful though for someone who's using like refreshable braille display or something like that. If they are perhaps hearing and vision, um, have hearing and vision loss. But that's, yeah, that's a good point.
But no, but my point though about that is that you don't want to assume because a person who's deaf-blind doesn't mean that they all use Braille or know how to read Braille.
Sure.
Some may just make the font extremely large and then they can see it depending on what their vision is like. So.
Yeah, yeah. So we're back to that, having that ability to really customize and adjust. And that's one of the things we also talk about a lot in our work is, if things are built with accessibility in mind, we're going to have those types of customizations and the robustness to do so in place. And those of us who do use any type of assistive technology, we pretty much have that like dialed in and set up to the way that we need to use it. And if your product or content is accessible, then we can kind of, roll up and use it in a way that works best for us, regardless of how we're getting there or what technology we're using. Um,
And
I definitely,
someone just typed in the Q&A and wanted to add, if there's a conference and there's no ASL interpreter, is it okay to just provide captioning? Yes, but you need a big screen because you don't know where people are seated in the conference room. They may be sitting way in the back or in the corner. So it's vitally important that you have a large screen with the captioning on it so it's readily readable. And a live captioner is probably the best thing to do if you can't get an ASL interpreter. Plus,
Awesome.
it's also nice to have a live captioner because then there's a transcript that you can save. And as somebody who perhaps missed the conference, you have a ready-made transcript there that you can provide to the people who missed the conference.
Awesome. Thank you.
sure. Yeah, yeah. So I was going to say, thanks for picking up those questions along the way for us, Laura. I was going to just take a pause here. We're having a great conversation, but I was going to let Gianna jump in and maybe talk a little bit about accessible web, and then we'll head back to those questions.
Yeah, so I don't want to take too much time away from the questions because I think we're having a great conversation. If you guys want to kind of chat more about how we can help broadly make your website accessible to users with a wide variety of disabilities, we would love to have that conversation. And we're readily available to kind of continue more personal conversations of this nature offline. So feel free to reach out to us via the website. But I think we should just jump back in to continue to answer these questions because we're having such a great conversation here. So
Thank
we've
you.
got another one here in chat. So much software relies on audio notifications to let users know about updates, messages, etc. Are there particular types of visual notifications you find helpful in things like software, chat interfaces, and other tech that you use?
We'd love to hear from
Yes,
Laura. Yeah.
yes. Color codes, visual color codes are very helpful, or flashing lights that can also work. Yeah, those are always really nice, and those are two options that would be my go-to options.
Awesome.
Yeah, I wish that I would see more of that out there, but it just seems that many people aren't aware of how to include people who are deaf and hard of hearing. It would be nice to see people who are developing technology have these options. For example, if you're looking for a baby monitor, a crying alert system, You have to, try to do 3 different accommodations in one. You could do like a travel one that also works in the home, but they don't have that. So you have to pack up all 3 of your baby monitoring systems and take them with you, and it's kind of a pain.
Yeah. I can imagine that packing up one baby monitor system is already a pain. So
Seems like quite enough.
yeah, I'm actually about to do that myself. And so I can imagine packing up 3 would just add to that. And I know that,
I'm
do you have, I have an interesting question too about other kind of physical notification accommodations you have in your home as well. The baby monitor one is an interesting question on that front. And I lived briefly in an accessible dorm, used a wheelchair. So I was in an accessible unit in college that had a doorbell on the outside that was designed for people who are deaf or hard of hearing as well. So it had a flashing light notification system and a very, very loud sound. And I, being in college, wished it was a little bit more customizable so that it could not be pressed randomly in the middle of the night by people in the hallway. But I wonder if those are the type of things that you may include in your own home and if there's technology to that front as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My home, yeah, let me tell you about my home. The fact is that my house right now is the most accessible house that I have ever lived in, and it's wonderful. But it's because we actually own it and we designed it. So we provided everything in this home for equal access for me. Each bedroom and the main floor and the basement all have fire alarms with a strobe light on it. So it flashes if the fire alarm goes off. And the second thing that we purchased, it's called a Square Glow. And that's a notification system that you get on your phone. If somebody walks in to the front or into the garage or opens the garage door and also the doorbell, it notifies me on my mobile phone.
Mm.
And it actually
Oh, love that.
glows. So that's Square Glow. And that's how it tells me. It's because if I'm in my office and the door is closed, I can't hear anything. It's a little bit annoying to have to purchase all of these separate systems and all of this equipment, plus the baby monitoring systems that we had. We spent over $3,000 altogether on all of this accessible equipment.
Yeah, it is expensive.
Not everybody has $3,000 to spend on access.
No, yeah,
Disability tax, we call it.
disability tax.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, Laura, I have a question. You mentioned using your mobile phone. I hear often like Google and Apple talking about things like sound detection capabilities and that sort of thing, like as they upgrade their, operating systems and whatnot. Have you found any of that to actually be useful? Does it work as advertised? I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
No, actually, it doesn't. They're very weak, unfortunately. I use my iPhone all the time, and I've tested all of these things to see
Mhm.
different platforms, different systems. Some work okay, but then after a while, they kind of fade out and they're no good anymore and they don't work anymore. I don't know why that is, but it is disappointing that they're not great.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
disappointing.
I'm always interested to hear whether things, sort of live up to the how they're marketed. I find that to be the case with some of the blindness and low vision features as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I even found that to be
Yep,
like
that's
my baby
exactly my
monitor too.
experience.
Sorry.
What'd you say, Gianna?
I said
Sorry.
my baby monitor had I had a similar experience because they had a notification, like they advertised notifying on sound and doing phone notifications for sounds that come from the baby. And it's almost like it faded out in effectiveness over time. Like it worked for a little bit and stopped working so well. So we have one final.
Well, yes, sometimes actually related to that, people don't realize that they can work for you. For example, last Sunday, it's interesting, very timely that you're asking me a tech question because last Sunday, related to a video phone, somebody asked me, can I use my video phone number just like a cell phone? And the answer is no, but you can do call forwarding. So you can forward any call that you receive on your mobile phone to your video phone. So call forwarding works for that. And then there was something else, another question that I fielded just recently related to audiobooks. Somebody was asking me, that app Audible, you can't actually read the captioning on it sometimes. Kindle, The Kindle app, if you download that, plus you can use it on your phone, there's like a subsetting on there. It's accessibility setting. I'm trying to think, you type into the accessibility setting text to speech, and blind people use that for audiobooks, and they will read it aloud for you. But a person who's deaf or hard of hearing who wants to practice their listening and reading at the same time, they also use that, so they can read the words and see them on the screen and hear somebody speaking the words at the same time. To be honest with you, I've used it myself, just practicing hearing with my hearing aids.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's interesting because I've actually been looking at some audiobook related apps for our work here at Accessible Web recently. So I know that those companies are thinking about how to make their applications more accessible to people with disabilities. So hopefully we can help with that on that front.
Yeah. Yeah. Pass along some of this really valuable information.
Exactly. So we have one final question here in chat. I know we're a little over time, so I just want to get this one question out. What are tips for disaster/preparedness planning for deaf people who rely on ASL to speak but are not blind? So for example, do they require light to communicate using ASL? These two questions have not been answered yet. Let's see.
Yes, excellent. Okay. So lights you can use for notification, but don't put a flashlight or something directly in the person's face. Do side lighting, softer lighting. But one thing that you need to be aware of is you can use on your cell phone sensible two things. One called live captioning and the other called live speech. Both of those are on mobile apps, and they are good for disaster preparedness and notifications and in case of emergency. A lot of people don't know about these two, and they do work in certain contexts. So if you want help with setting that up, please just make an appointment. I sit down with you and help you set it up on your phone.
Awesome. Thank you. No, definitely very important. It's a super important question when we talk about disaster preparedness and making sure it is accessible to all individuals.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we're definitely at time or a little bit over, but I really appreciated this conversation. Laura, thank you so much for joining us and, shedding some light on things that, unfortunately, a lot of folks aren't thinking about and, just overall increasing awareness. Is there anything else you'd like to share, from your perspective before we wrap up or anything else?
No, just be mindful that, we're all different, and each individual will require a different approach. Just don't assume anything in terms of assistive technology. Reach out to me anytime. We can have a direct conversation. And you can look me up. I'm on vermont.gov, and you can find my website. Hopefully you'll reach out. I would absolutely love to have a conversation with each and every one of you to support your work
Awesome.
in whatever ways I can.
Thank you so much. Such good advice for all of us. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And we will be back right here on next Thursday to talk more digital accessibility. Thanks, Gianna.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Laura.